she would just really gently invite me to choose responsibility.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm hearing you and I can see why, blah, blah, blah. But like, what if you were to stand in your power? What if you were to be more responsible? What would 100% responsibility look like right now? If you were to take not 105, but not
Sure.
95,
Sure.
like if you were to take that 100% responsibility position, what would that look like? And it was like I'd realize, oh, shoot, like, yeah, I know what it looks like. And it means I'm not a victim. And it means I'm also not a villain. And it means like, oh yeah, come into this position in which, oh, I have agency again. Let's start using it accurately.
Hello and welcome to the One Heart podcast, sponsored by One Heart, One Light. One Heart, One Light is an authentic, diverse community of men and women who have a background with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We choose to love and be loved unapologetically. We teach unique tools to apply Christ's atonement, and we are a bridge to becoming one with self, others, and God. Today our guest is Dan Chambers. Dan has been married for 24 years and is the father of 4 children. A few years ago, Dan experienced an awakening where he began to see that his challenges and weaknesses were the path forward, which shifted his thinking and changed him. Dan now brings his insight to Unlimited Soul Coaching to help others find their own divinity. Dan, welcome to the show.
Super glad to be here, Matt. Honored, in fact.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited. I mean, it's been, 3 years ago, I think, when we first kind of met, right? It was an
Yes.
online experience. And I remember being very, very impressed with your insights and the things you were bringing. And as I've thought about, what kind of guests, what kind of messages do I want to share on this podcast, you kept coming to mind. And so thank you for being willing to take a risk and and see where we go from here.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite ways to live life, how you described it, that we show up and then we see what happens, because that's where the aliveness is. That's where the magic, so I think, exists, is in those moments. So yeah, I'm excited, Matt. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you. So first thing I want to do is just kind of jump into your coaching business. Tell us what is it that you're, focusing on, and what are you building right now in that?
Yeah, and we may get more to my backstory that leads to this moment, because I think that'll also apply.
Yeah.
So I have a business called Unlimited Soul. That name is a name I found over 10 years ago in kind of another little micro journey that was part of me ending up here. So I've always loved that name. The business that I'm developing, growing, and building right now has to do with what I refer to as personal leadership. It's in the framework of what I call self-knowing and source connecting. So it's a process, it's a journey in which individuals come to more deeply recognize who they are. And one of the challenges, I think, even explaining like this, Matt, is that some of this sounds so cliche. Like every coach is doing this. Like,
Sure.
That's what we're all doing, Dan. I get it. So, but having said that, so I'm wanting to, I guess, reference that self-knowing those are the words I choose to use to describe how I help people, because I just feel like that is there's nothing more valuable to me than understanding who I am as not just a moment or as a like fixed entity, but as like a dynamic aliveness, like, oh, here I am. And in this moment, if that makes sense, and cultivating the capacity to be aware of that, like my divine dynamic nature in this moment. That's what my coaching is about. And it of course involves God. It involves source connecting. I work with people of all faith structures, but I always lean on and found it's essential for transformation to occur, that there is a connection of belief and a connection to a higher power. So
that's beautiful. Can I just comment? I what I hear you saying is, to me, self-knowing is more like, how does God see me? And what's the difference, right? Because I may see myself as, oh, I'm shy, or oh, I'm this, or oh, I'm that, or I can't do math well, or God doesn't see that. He sees, he sees the creator that I am. He sees the gifts he gave me, even though I may be hiding them or stuffing them. Or is that kind of in line with what you're thinking of? No, self-knowing would be knowing me from that perspective.
Yeah, it is absolutely that, Matt. It is a letting go of. To me, the first step of self-knowing is actually, and I often say this, everything starts with letting go.
Sure.
So it is letting go of, like you say, some of these stories, labels, fallen beliefs, right? That encumber that view of who we are that's divine. So it's seeing ourselves as God sees us, but there's a facet of it that's almost seeing ourselves. It's in as much as we're like maybe gaining God's view of us through his light and his power and his goodness to help us see. There's also this like, and I see me not as, does that make sense? It's like there's an awareness, there's a
Sure.
development of self-awareness in this. And I don't know that I communicated that perfectly, but there's this aha of seeing myself. And maybe what I'm saying is as a result of maybe having these views from God expand in me
Sure.
so that I see them more. Now I begin to see myself in the moment I'm in these ways that I have more agency and more capacity and more goodness, as you kind of illuminate. Really, like some of these gifts and talents that are already there are not forced to be used, but they naturally come to the surface. Almost like
Love that.
it's an easier self-expression as a result of that view. And maybe that's what I was trying to
That's
communicate.
beautiful. No, I love the way you describe that. So, and I'm sure as we continue to walk through this, it'll become more clear. I guess I was just trying to
Absolutely.
get some more data around what does that mean, self knowing. So awesome. How have you come to? And you kind of hinted a minute ago about your own journey, right? How have you come to this point
Hmm.
that you're taking this on, and you mentioned the name of your company came 10 years ago, or so um, you were doing something different then.
Yeah, maybe that's a decent place to start, Matt. And actually, I'm like, yeah, time flies when you're having fun, so to speak. So that name came in 2006. So that's what are we talking here?
Wow.
Almost, yeah, almost 20 years ago. So, um, 2006, I was a part of a business called Tech Connect, and this will link up. I was a successful salesman for that company, but felt this desire for this next step. And I just felt kind of an internal like, oh, I want something bigger and better. And my career at that point had been very linear and had just, oh, I'm selling more now and I'm a better salesman. I make a little more money. This is nice. I'm providing for my family. We bought a home. We have 2 kids. It looks nice and pretty. And I feel this desire for something else. So I told my company, because I was in a position to choose to do this. I said, I'm ready to do something else. And I had an opportunity with a best friend to leave and to start our own business together. And we decided to go into real estate during 2006 when real estate was hot
Sure.
and a lot of things were going on. So I left the company that I'd been a part of since 1998. From 1998 to 2006, I'd been involved in this company. We went into real estate together, but we were investing in real estate, but really we had this vision of a company. And what's cool is I even have the original document that we created at that moment about Unlimited Soul. And hopefully this isn't bad podcast etiquette, but I
It's all
happen
good.
to have it right here because this is pretty cool to me. This journal is from that time frame.
Wow.
So we started to journal and gather stuff, and we made this document in 2006. And it's pretty epic as it goes through and kind of page after page, we kind of wrote these things down. So in 2006, I'm having this profound experience about starting a business called Unlimited Soul. Me and my buddy go all in, invest in real estate, and think we're gonna change the world. This is it. Like we're super excited. And I think most of us know, if you're old enough, you know
Sure.
that what happened next was one of the biggest financial collapses that our economy's seen in a long time. Minus the little COVID blip, this was probably the most substantial one of my lifetime.
Right.
So suddenly I'm in a position where instead of building this business. We bought 6 homes together.
Wow.
And some were duplexes and fourplexes. So we were heavily invested, and the wheels start coming off this bus. And we are hustling and thinking, we'll figure this out. I have resources. He has resources. We're just throwing resources at this thing, imagining it's going to turn. Everything's going to work out. And as many people experienced, I also experienced, and I'll just keep it simple, like a total loss.
Sure.
We kept everything in this moment where Unlimited Soul was like, this is going to be our baby. This is going to be our thing. As these wheels started coming off, I found a job in upstate New York in the same industry that I had been in. This critical backup power was what Tech Connect was. I found this job in upstate New York, and that's where I'd served a mission. So that's how this contact came about. I reached out. I mean, me and Joy praying, fasting, doing all these things all the time, trying to find what's our solution here? Where's the answer here? And this individual in upstate New York that I knew for my mission says, I'll hire you. It's in this field you've been successful at. And we're going to go back and live in the Palmyra Stake. So wow. Really a pretty epic place. I'd been there. So it felt like this is destiny. The Lord is answering our prayers. Here we come. We get to upstate New York. And what I didn't know on the way there that was about to happen was this was actually ultimately the nail in the coffin. We get out there and he pays me half what he said he would. Mm. And the relationship becomes strange and awkward. It's not working out. And we're at the point where we had to have something work. And we just moved our whole family out there. Right. Well, our 2 kids, and then my wife has a baby. And so we just have a baby. We've been out there for 6 months. I go into work. It's Halloween. And he says, you're done. Today's your last day. This isn't working. Like, I'll give you $1,000 if you give me your laptop and don't speak bad about me. And I was like all of our hopes, and we just, traveled 2,000 miles to this new place. Right. It's like, oh no. So in that moment of where all of my pride is just being stripped off me, because and I'm trying to provide. I'm the provider. Joyce, my wife's trying to take care of the kids. And suddenly now it's like, and so I didn't tell her. I'm like, what am I supposed to tell her this, right? So I get home, it's Halloween, we're going trick-or-treating. We go to one house. This is just an odd story to me. We go to one house, we get candy. My daughter's walking down the driveway and she throws up everywhere on this driveway. Just like, oh no, what's wrong with Abby? So Joy's like, I'll take her home. And I'm like, wait. At this moment, I decided to say, oh, I got fired today. And she just looks at me like, because in the background, our properties in Utah, it's like, no, people aren't paying rent. People are like, they've left it and it's in a wreck, like short sale, foreclosed. We don't know what's happening. We're trying to hold it together.
Sure.
And then now there's no job. So that Unlimited Soul 1 began with this hope.
Sure.
And it's like, oh no, what is happening, right? And at that moment, we recognize that I feel like the only way I can survive is with help, and all my help's back in Utah.
Sure.
So I call my dad, help. He flies my wife and our 3 kids home because Joy had just had a child. And then my brother-in-law comes out and pays for a truck. We load as much of my stuff into it as we can, and we drive cross country, and we leave half of our stuff in a storage unit in upstate New York because we couldn't afford to do anything different. So here I am back in Utah, and my dad's paying my rent. The church is helping us with stuff because it's like, and I'm, from a faith standpoint and an emotional standpoint, I mean, just in every aspect, I've just had like the windows blown out.
Sure.
Because, and I know people have been here, but it's like you're praying, and this is, I laugh at this, Matt. We would have people say like, oh no, my husband lost his job. And we'd be like, oh man, we understand, like we're going through some hard times too. Yeah, this is really rough. And then they'd talk to us in 2 weeks. Oh, good news. We prayed and he got an even better job. Like he's making more money. And we got to the point where we were just like, we can't be friends anymore. I can't hear that, because our journey was now years in. Right. And and we're praying, we're fasting, we're hustling, we're asking. And here's the moment I'll always remember, Matt. And this may be a little embarrassing, but it is what it is. So we're back. Most of these properties now have foreclosed or short sold.
Sure.
So, but we still have creditors coming after us. It's rough. We have one vehicle and I'm trying to find work, but we're making a payment every other month. It is because it's just like, and I'm talking to the bank like, hey, I need this. I'll keep paying. So just work with me. And they said, yeah, we'll work with you. 2:00 in the morning, bam, bam, bam. Huh? I wake up, look out there. Dude has it. Repo guy's like, hey, sorry, man. I'm taking your, like, they send me to come take your car. If you'll give me the keys, I'll let you get all your stuff out of there. And it's just another of those moments that I'm like, is this my life? Like,
Right.
Okay, just like absolutely, you get to this. I was at this point, Matt, where like, it was like nothing else could have taken my breath away. There was no breath left. It was just like, okay, fold, come out there. Here's the keys. Come inside. Joy's like, what that? I'm like, car's repoed. We don't have a car. So It was just like, and literally 2 years before this, I'm making 6 figures more money than I've ever made in my life. Sure. So now it's like, it's below zero. It's like, we owe so many things. So many things aren't being met. So many people are coming after us. So just a devastating, difficult moment. And in that moment, and I guess this is where this comes together. So in that moment, in the rawness of having everything that I created and made, and I would say maybe even was taking credit for, sure, like, oh, I'm doing this, right? It's suddenly gone. And me and Joy are kind of at this position of not knowing what to do. At that moment, I think about Tech Connect, the place I'd worked at before. But I've had pride about going back there because I'm like, oh, I left as like the guy that was going to go save the world and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm coming back like, can I have a handout? Like I messed up bad, like everything didn't work. But needless to say, I had enough humility at that moment to go back and to talk with him. And I talked to the owner and said, can I come back? I will come back. But here's what was so profound about this little journey. That surprises me even to this day as I think about why was I able to say that at this moment? So, because we're in need. The need has never been higher.
Right.
And I go back to say, I'm interested in a job, but I need to tell you something. Even through all of this, what I knew actually probably better than I knew at the beginning was that I wanted ownership. And I knew that if I came back to him and just said, I'll sell for you, that I would probably leave again. And I just said it. I said, here's where I'm at, but I will not blindside you, but that's the truth. And here comes the answer to the prayer that we've been waiting for we didn't know was ever going to come.
Right.
And he loved me and I was a great employee and we left on great terms. So there was no bad blood. He said, well, Dan, I'll tell you what, if you'll come back, I'll sell you my whole company.
Wow.
And I'll finance it even in essence, it's yours if you'll come back. And at that moment, I never would have seen that This was the journey. Okay. So I preface all that because that's where the origins of Unlimited Soul began. Mm-hmm. So I never wanted to let go of that, even though here I am back at now Tech Connect, this business I started at with this new beginning. And that's kind of what happened. So then, it didn't happen in a moment. It happened over years of building ourselves out of the hole that we were in. Sure. And then, so, helping build it, run it, and then purchase it. I became the owner at the end of 2014. So I came back to give it that was 2006 is when 2009, when I came back to him. Right. So I leave in 2006, have this 3-year
boom and bust.
Yeah. And then end up back there with this opportunity that I would not have imagined. I was, in fact, because the reason I made my request or my statement was like, how about 5%? Like, could I have a little ownership? That'll keep me here. Because great. Then right. When you sell it or something, I have a reason to stay. That's what I knew I wanted. I never would have expected here, the whole thing. Here's the keys. Right. When it's time, I'll give you the whole thing. So that became this journey into my moment. I'm an owner in 2017, about 3 years into this journey of being an owner of the business. And my financial life now has never been more stable. It's never been more comfortable. We've never had more options than we have suddenly. So financially, just feeling like almost like, wow, I didn't like, this is great. And then, our marriage has, not that I would say back there, we didn't come together, but it was rough for both of us individually to go through that. And a lot of that has really mended and healed. And there's a lot more closeness. And now we have a fourth child. So we have 4 kids, good marriage, own a business. It's 2017, and
everything's perfect, right?
Looking, I would have said, oh yeah, look, that's where I always want to get to. There it is. When those 2 things are in place, perfect. And suddenly, I start to have something inside me come up, and it kind of like maybe bubbles up is the phrase, but a little more sharp than a bubble, because it would be like I'd be doing okay, and then sometimes I'd get home from work, something, and suddenly I would get angry in a way that was so uncharacteristic for me. And even like when I'm in the moment of this, it was almost like it was happening to me, would almost be the way I describe it, though I don't know that that's accurate, but it felt like that. It definitely felt like, why am I just so emotional suddenly in this moment?
More than a bubble, more like a spike coming up.
Yeah, that's a better word, because it wasn't like a little, it was like pop. So I start to have these moments, and I hope this story is flowing in a way that is understandable because of what you requested. And I tend to love to tell I love a good story, so I tell a good story. So here I'm in this moment now, having these spike moments that show up for me. And Matt, we've talked about this, but I start to have what I call 10 reactions to 2 events. And so here, life's meeting me at some point, and my reaction is always an overreaction. And I cannot put my finger on it. I don't know why it's happening. And it doesn't make sense to me either, because logically everything looks fine, feels fine. So why would I feel a sense of discontent that I cannot shake? And that is when I found a coach. Somebody said, maybe you could try, therapy, but maybe you should try a coach. And at that moment, a coach sounded more interesting to me. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. So I engaged working with a personal coach, and over a 12-week period of time had my first experience in coaching, and she was inviting me to see fallen beliefs and practices and thoughts that didn't honor me and serve me, and patterns
speak to some of those, if you don't mind. What are some of the fallen beliefs that you, because it sounds like, and this is something, that we deal with a lot at One Heart, One Light, is what are you believing? Because that's driving your emotion. So can you share some of those that you remember dealing with?
Yeah, for sure. Probably the framework that helps me talk about it best. There's a triangle called the drama triangle. Maybe you're familiar with that. It's from Cartman, an older psychologist that invented this idea that there's these 3 positions. When you get scared, essentially when fear is running your life, and when I think of fear, I'll say this, and these are the words I was being taught at this time, so that's why I'll use these to then be specific. They would say you're either running in love and trust, or you're running in fear. Those are your only options. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no additional ones. It's here. And the fear is fear that I'm not good enough, or fear that my life isn't good enough. So those are the 2 fears, and they can manifest in a lot of ways. So the thoughts I was having at this moment had to do with, I'm not good enough. I mean, I think that's so general, but I was sitting there looking at myself, looking at these moments, and noticing how so much of my behavior, the patterns we were uncovering, is in this moment, I would do things for my wife. I would do things for my friends. I would do things even for employees. But the reason I did them was because I really wanted them to come back and say, you're a good boss. You're a good husband. Like, you're a great friend. And when it didn't, I was blowing up, which was just like, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. That was invisible to me. I just thought I was being a good guy. So these thoughts that were really driving that was I'm not good enough unless they tell me I am, right? I
Right.
was looking for this outward
Needing the
acknowledgement.
validation, right? Somebody else to,
Totally.
yeah, absolutely. I've been there.
Yeah. So that definitely was one of them. And then I have another pattern of belief that would be exposed. So I don't know if this is exactly like this would be more, it'd probably be more belief that would translate into a thought. But the belief was if one is good, 10 is better.
Sure.
Okay. If one is good, 10 is better. Now, so what that would started to look like at this moment, okay, because I had some financial stability, is that when I didn't feel good about myself or my life, which again, it's almost like it didn't make sense because my life, as it were, looked good, but I was having experiences around, I would see the guy, the other business owner, and how he was doing something better or doing something more or whatever it was. And these were very like hidden thoughts. These were not thoughts that I was saying to anybody. So
Well, it
in
sounds
some
like you
ways,
didn't even know them yourself, right?
yeah,
So you needed some
correct.
help to even bring them to the surface and say, what do
That's
I really believe
exactly.
that?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what was happening. And so anyway, it started to look like I would essentially, oh, hey, that's a cool pair of shoes. Does it come in other colors? I'll take every one. Like I started to do, there's a picture my wife has. Anyway, embarrassing, but it's true. I bought little racks that I could put in my basement where I could just start putting my shoes. I had over 200 pairs of shoes.
Wow.
So it wasn't like, that's what I mean. Like when I say one is good, 10 is better, I mean, like it was off the rails, 10 is better. Um, but that's because I was chasing this direction, right? I was
Sure.
like, I don't feel good and I can't see why. And so those were some of these things and beliefs and like you said, that the coach was helping me go, you need to see these thoughts and these comparisons that that are part of that you believe so that you can make a new choice. Um, and your organization probably understands this. Like that was so transformational to me to just have it introduced. It didn't
Sure.
fix me like this, but suddenly it was almost like life was like this, and then suddenly it did this, and
Sure.
I had this space between what I chose to do more and life, and
It's like your
I just
agency, right? When you did that gap thing, I'm like, that's the spot where your agency lives is what it feels like, because I've been there where I get angry. It's like before I've even consciously processed what my wife just said, I'm already mad. I'm like, how
yeah
did that even happen? How am I yelling at her when she hasn't even finished what she's saying?
yeah
That's not fair to her. And I don't understand what's going on. I didn't at
that's
the time.
that you just described it so well, right? It's like when life is like this, this is what like it's happening to you.
Sure.
So it feels like there's no choice. That's how I was experiencing so many moments then, especially in these blowups with Joy or
Sure.
whoever. It, like you say, like I would recognize I was overreacting way after I'd overreacted, almost at the end of going, oh wait, I overreacted, didn't I? Right? Like after I'd, blowtorch somebody and it wasn't friendly. So um yeah, so that was this aha that I didn't at that moment think it was more than that. But it because of that little and the experience I was having, I began to choose more coaching and more journeys into, I would say, this world of, I could use a couple different words here, Matt, but I think the words I want to use right now is, though at this time, even back then, I'd never used these words, but it ultimately was repentance. Okay,
Oh,
I was
amen.
just, I was discovering change and how it worked, and that it was possible for me, and that in fact, no matter what it was, it could change, and I was beginning to be introduced to my own, like, to the faith that I needed in Christ to go, oh yeah, this can be changed, and I don't think I can change it, but with His help, I can, and I was believing in that and I began to choose. I mean, I still have a coach, but I went from those 12 weeks into about 2.5 years of working with a coach, 2 years of working with a coach,
Yeah.
in which I started working once a week with her. And then I'm like, that's not enough. I want twice a week. And those were 60-minute sessions. And I'm like, no, I need 2 hours twice a week.
Wow.
I love to verbalize. That's one of the ways in which I process.
Sure.
So this just became like medicine for me. And I had a great coach that would, no matter how I wanted to blame someone or my life or tell some story that I'm a victim or whatever it was, and this is one of my favorite things about how she coached, and it relates to how I coach. She would never be like, stop it. Don't think that. That's not a good thought. She would just really gently invite me to choose responsibility.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm hearing you and I can see why, blah, blah, blah. But like, what if you were to stand in your power? What if you were to be more responsible? What would 100% responsibility look like right now? If you were to take not 105, but not 95.
Sure.
Like if you were to take that 100% responsibility position, what would that look like? And it was like I'd realize, oh, shoot, like, yeah, I know what it looks like. And it means I'm not a victim. And it means I'm also not a villain. And it means like, oh yeah, come into this position in which, oh, I have agency again. Let's start using it accurately. And if I get home from work and my wife doesn't come and say, oh, Dan, I'm so glad you're home. I love you. Then if that's what I want the experience to be,
sure,
then I can walk in and say, where are you, Joy? I want to give you a hug, and engage her. And she hugs me back and I get what I wanted, but I don't walk in and go, she didn't come, and start to have a reaction over her not loving me the way that blah, blah, blah. So it was those
I love the way you said that. Yeah. And that's part of my journey is being able to validate myself.
Yes.
Can I love myself? Even if nobody in the world pats me on the head and says, you're a good guy, you're really nice, and you come out and serve and help. I've lived that. I've shown up at service projects wanting the pat on the head. I use that just, the patronizing, oh, hey, you're good, you're nice, because I couldn't give it to myself, is the way I kind of interpret that is when I was in that place of, I don't know, self-hatred, self-rejection, not thinking I'm worth anything. That's how I've, I guess, interpreted it in my own way.
Yeah, spot on. And I assume everybody's had their moments of that, but that's exactly what it was. And learning that to be responsible, because I think even that word for me had some burden energy around it, like, oh, more responsibility, but I'm already burdened or something, right? Like instead it really, my coach helped me go, no, this is really how you step into your agency. If you want power, then you have to choose to be responsible. So part of that journey was kind of a drop at a time, a line upon line, shifting inside of me that began to realize, oh no, I want responsibility, not as a burden, but as the freedom. Like that's my path
Absolutely.
to freedom. And so just as you're saying, I began to like none of these ideas are profound, but it's like, oh, if that's what I want, then I'll choose it. And if someone doesn't show up the way that I hope they would, that doesn't take me down. Like in fact, that may mean like, oh, maybe they need something, right? Like
Absolutely.
Taking this different approach, especially to those core relationships, and adding more stability and love to them. So that was happening through this.
That's beautiful. And you say none of these is profound. What I think is profound is, and the word that comes to mind is becoming conscious, conscious of not only of the mental games I'm playing, but conscious of my own power, conscious that I can choose. Because I feel like I lived so much of my life in victim mode, right? Not wanting to set goals because, well, what if something happens, right? What if something happens that affects this? Well, then just kind of believing I didn't have power to choose my own path and to create and to accomplish and to make things happen. So becoming conscious of that has been, that's the profound part, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Spot on. I agree. That's to me what like transformation means in some ways, is that consciousness of who I am and where I'm at and the presence of God in my life. It suddenly it's real. It's there. I notice it. I experience it. And it doesn't require perfection of me, but it does require that I stay in this real moment and not run to victim, or run to pleasure, or run to something, because I don't want to stay in the moment, because consciousness is powerful, but like you say, it's also scary, because that means you're going to stay in the moment that before you didn't. I mean, it's not when you're feeling really good about yourself. Well, yeah, most people are willing, but not everybody. Most people are willing to stay in those moments for a period of time. So it's interesting, because I think consciousness actually also blesses us, because I think there's two things. I've seen two things in my life, Matt, and the one is that I'm only comfortable feeling good for a certain amount of time too.
True.
And so part of consciousness in this expansion is that, oh, I know how to feel good all day long, or for hours at a time, before it's not okay to feel good for this long. I better limit myself.
Oh yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've been there, right? And when somebody does compliment, it's like, no, I didn't. And I even have a few friends these days that can say, stop for a minute. I want you to receive this gift. I appreciate what you've done. Can you receive that? Like, okay, I think I can, but you're right. It's hard. It's challenging to receive praise when I'm so busy beating myself up.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Like, so as I watched my journey, I was learning how to be, and so kind of maybe move ahead here, receive and release and create. Those three words are kind of at the heart of most of my work. So, and the reason it is not because I read it in a book, but because I just began to notice, this is the experience I'm actually having.
Yeah.
Is releasing, receiving, and creating. Fundamentally, all this direction, all with myself and God, like this rich transaction in which, like we're saying, like, because here was the thought I had one day, and maybe you've had similar thoughts, and maybe others have had these thoughts, but I just noticed, like, if I'm not willing to receive a compliment, if I want to deflect even a compliment, then how am I going to receive the grace of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
It's way richer and more powerful than a compliment. So I began to see some of these moments as opportunities to practice receiving Christ, even because,
yeah.
That's Go good. Ahead.
And sorry to interrupt. You can finish your thought if.
No, it really became, I began to see, there's a connection here, and my capacity to receive, I began to see life as an opportunity to practice receiving and releasing, because I think it's kind of like yes and no. I view yes and no. I used to view yes and no as like yes is over here and no is over here.
Like the yin and the yang.
Yeah, but now I'm like, oh no, every time you say yes, you also said no. And every time you say no, you said yes. So I began to have that sense, and that same energy I could see with release and receive. Like there was this cyclical yin yang experience.
Well, it's funny you say that, because even in the work I do, we say it out loud that if you surrender something to Christ, he's going to give you something in return. He doesn't receive anything without responding. And so if you surrender I think you called it a fallen belief. I love that term. Well, he's going to give you something that's a higher belief, something that's more true about you, something that you can receive. And then, it's an upward spiral as I envision it.
I think you're spot on. And I'll tell you, can I share one of the ways in which I kind of experienced that myself, that way you just explained? So like you say, I love that idea. And I began to notice, so if I just give this to Christ, what does happen? What comes back? And that's to me why that final word of create, and maybe that's what you're referencing as far as spiral. I would notice that it's almost like whatever was given, there was a shell to it that he could cleanse, and it was gone. But then he would almost give it back as like, so here's this energy and this capacity back. Now create with it. Now use, like, it's lightful, it's pure. Now create. And it almost like it felt like an opportunity to step more into creative expression as a result of releasing and receiving. The net impact of those two things occurring was an invitation to create. And that to me is where, like, I get my most contact with divinity, when I'm in my creative
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
whoa.
Absolutely. And what I hear you saying is, I think you even used this word in maybe a previous conversation, but kind of a fallen belief becomes a redeemed belief.
Yep.
There's, the master touches it, and now it's not that it's wrong. I was just maybe looking at it in an empowering versus a disempowering way, and I can move from there and create.
Exactly. I mean, again, I think I'm speaking from my experience and how I really do experience my interaction with God and Christ, and is a profound gentleness and
Sure.
a profound friendliness that always invites me to realize just what you're alluding to. From fallen to redeemed, it's like, oh, I thought this was the problem, and Christ says, no, it's the path. Because so that 10-1, okay, 10-1 was one of my fallen beliefs that was expressing itself in just, essentially, we'll just say for the one example, buying too many pairs of shoes, way too many.
Sure.
Like, it's not, so what's the accurate? So there's a fallen expression of it. Well, what's the redeemed expression of it?
Right.
And for me, what the redeemed expression, what I've learned about, so that it's not like that energy in of itself has to be gotten rid of. Like, I just need to get rid of that. It's like, no, it needs that light and that touch of the master, that now I understand, oh, this is about receiving me. So when I view 1 is good, 10 is better, it was like life maybe used to look like this. Right. And from here to here was 1. But if 1 is good, 10 is better, well, wait a sec, can here to here be 10? Meaning the richness of my experience and the receiving and the releasing, I now have 10 spots as opposed to 1 in the same segment. And wow. then he says, oh, because if one is good, 10 is better, essentially we're talking about an exponential at a 0 moment. Sure. And so then he says, well, here's another 0. Well, now in that same moment, I have 100 slots. Right. And that's kind of how I experience, again, the juiciness and the aliveness of even consciousness. Like, so when we talk about that idea of consciousness, it can sound on or off, but it's really not. It's at what level, how many slots have I cultivated in this moment? Sure. Of notice and of receiving and of releasing? How many slots? And so kind of maybe come full circle with.
That's beautiful. What comes to mind is the scripture, Ether 12:27, that we have to first come to him with our weakness so that he can then touch it, redeem it, and make it into a strength. It's not that, to your point, it's not that I totally give it away. It's that, no, this has now been redeemed into a gift. So what you experience, what you suffered, what maybe hurt so bad, it now enriches your life because you can have compassion for someone who walked that path, or you can now use this gift to bless in a way that you never could before if you hadn't walked that journey. That's what I'm kind of hearing.
Exactly.
Thanks again for listening to the One Heart Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe and check us out online at oneheartonelight.org.